Look at this. Look how close this guy is. That's one of the reasons I'm only flying above my house right now and not out there, even though it's a little bit more scenic. We're definitely allowed to take off from here. We've never had a no-fly zone here. The helicopters every now and then will fly over the James River, which is to my left. And on those days, you definitely don't want to be flying by the river. But today I want to be testing out Autell's latest update for the Evo Lite Plus, where they improve some of the tracking features. We don't have as nice of a view over there, but on the roof here, we do have a bit of an obstacle course in that we have a tight corridor behind me here. We have some obstacles that it could potentially lose me for. Tracking wasn't available before, so we're going to be seeing how well it performs right now and seeing what kind of shots we can get out of it. The first thing I wanted to test is how quickly does it recognize a human subject to track. At times it's picking up the little shrub to my left, but for the most part it's only detecting humans. Previously the tracking would show a lot of other different subjects available for tracking on its own. Things with high contrast or things that just kind of stood out from the rest of the scene. That shrub would be an example, but it would actually have a lot of other subjects too. So while this might seem like a relatively small and easy course for the drone to fly around and track me through, there's actually a couple things going on. One, we've got a really high contrast scene and a lot of dark colors in the shadows. In the long corridor, that's where we have the darker shadows, and I actually intentionally wore a darker sweatshirt just to see if I could blend into the darkness a little bit more and maybe trick the drone into losing me that way. But more importantly, because of how tight and narrow that corridor is, it's a very tricky area for the drone to fly around and keep me tracked through. In these tests, we'll notice a couple things in the drone's flight pattern and how it decides to track and what causes it to lose you as well. The first thing I want to look at is the drone's flight characteristics. At this point here, I've taken over manual controls just so I can get the drone to be a little bit higher above me and avoid hitting the roof. As soon as I hit track and then follow, notice how the drone goes from 34 feet down to 20, 16, 15, 12, all the way down to about 3 feet above the roof. Now 2, now 1. It's almost at my height, and although moments ago I manually set the height with the controller, it decided to override that and get pretty low again. There doesn't seem to be any way within the app in order to set this manual height and keep it maintained. I try again here with the controller, raising its height a little bit more, and notice again how within just a few moments, it'll dip down again. This makes it trickier for the drone to track me around this corner here, where although it loses me, or it looks like it loses me, with the box turning red for just a moment, it still maintains the tracking, and then, for whatever reason, it decides, okay, now it wants to go with the front view shot of me. Keep in mind I'm standing still, but the drone decides it wants to circle around me for whatever reason. And then once it gets to this open area, despite it having more space, that for whatever reason also seems to freak the drone out just a little bit. As I move forward, again, it'll track me perfectly back. It'll then say insufficient space tracking exit, although that's the biggest and open area above my house. Again, going forwards and backwards through this tight corridor, it does a really good job, but for whatever reason, it decides occasionally to move from a front profile shot to a side one, and then occasionally gives you that red box for just a few moments. Again, the box is turning red, and it finds me again. It quickly tracks me. It even locks down right to my face, and even though it was only my face going through that tight little area, it still maintains the tracking. And now this is the first time we've seen the drone move to the left side of the roof, my right-hand side, as it comes out of that corridor. What's interesting about these tests, although I'm going back and forth through the same area, you'll notice that its flight pattern itself is not the same. So far, tracking seems to be very reliable, and it's even able to anticipate where I'm going, and even though it loses me for quite a bit, it's able to track me and lock back on after a few moments. With these initial tests, it's apparent that the drone is able to track onto humans very well, but its flight pattern needs to be improved. This next area is actually really impressive because the drone anticipates where I'm going, and even though it loses me for a moment, and actually a couple times around this corner, it still holds on to me. But notice again just how much the drone is deciding to fly around. It doesn't necessarily stay very still despite the fact that I'm staying very still. This is one area that I was a little bit confused about because the drone just seemed to have a mind of its own at times and was just flying a little bit sporadically. I try to take over manual controls to set the drone's height a little bit higher as well as its angle facing me too. And this brings up another interesting point, how the drone will maintain the same speed, distance, and height and angle throughout that tight corridor, but once it gets to that open area, it decides it wants to maintain more of an angle to my left shoulder. Around the corridor, it loses me for just a moment, but again picks me up right again once it notices my head. So it doesn't even need to see your full body, it recognizes the parts of the body. So it does have good human recognition here. Next, I wanted to see how well it could track me as I move a little bit quicker, and I move between a couple more obstacles here that are also very bright and vibrant. Notice again how it decides it wants to track me. For the most part, the drone is actually stationary in this one corner, panning right to left and tilting up and down with its gimbal. In this example, the movements are much more stable, smooth, and reliable. Despite me jumping back and forth from side to side and running between obstacles, the drone locks onto me very well, but again, its movements are very smooth. So tracking is a lot better right now with the newest update, in that we previously didn't have any tracking before, so it's great that it's finally included. It works well, and even though, we've got some complicated areas up here, we've got the tight corridor, we have a lot of other obstacles that it could lose me for, so it manages to stay on me, and I think with the exception of 1 or 2 times, it really locked on and didn't lose me at all. That said, when it's actually moving around and deciding, I don't know, its trajectory or whatever path it wants to take in order to keep you in frame, it doesn't really seem to make too much sense to me. Going back and forth this way, going straight, it made sense. Like, maybe because it knew it couldn't track me from these different locations with its height, it needed to kind of go forwards and backwards. But once it got to this opening over here, for whatever reason, it wanted to hang left. It doesn't really seem to give you any kind of manual controls over its positioning. This doesn't seem to have that ability right now, but hopefully in a future update we get that. Autel is definitely headed in the right direction with their updates, but I'd definitely like to see how much more they can improve this with future updates. Now, as far as other things that I'm still expecting out of this drone with hopefully a future update, that would be consolidating all the different features and modes. For example, it would be nice if we can get log, manual settings, as well as tracking under one video profile or video mode, kind of like you do with DJI's drones. And in many ways, I think that's going to unlock a lot of potential with this drone if they can finally get that updated. Because right now, just switching between them limits you in what you can do. You have to decide, do I want to have manual controls, or do I want to be able to track? Do I want to be able to shoot and log? Do I want to be able to change different file formats and shoot in different video profiles and modes? So we'll see if we can get that and how long it'll take. Until the next one, guys, I'll catch you later.